Hold on tight for the next hour. You're entering into a place, a zone called the alternative to the alternative media. It's a place, a special place where even truth seekers fear to tread.
All right, people, let's move like we've got a purpose.
Affirmative.
Okay, welcome back to the Investigative Journal on this March 29th, 2017 day on our calendar. And today's show is all about the Trump card. Why was Donald Trump selected to be the 45th president? And isn't it interesting to note that Hillary Clinton and Donald Trump come from the same family lineage? Very interesting. And if you look closely, most all our presidents come from elite stock, so to speak. And that's quite an interesting story when you start looking at the history of each one of our presidents' genealogy. Very, very interesting. But people email me all the time and go, Greg, what's up with Trump? Is he on the level? Is he working for the Jesuits? Etc., etc. So today we're going to try to answer that question. And first I'm going to look at Trump, Obama, Bush, and Clinton on about 4 or 5 core issues. And then I'm going to turn to Walter Veith, who presented a real good presentation regarding Trump. Now, let me give you my quick view. I don't believe there's been a president in our recent history that hasn't been selected by the Vatican-led New World Order. The difference is, on the surface, most people will look and say, on a superficial level, wow, Trump and Bush couldn't be more different than Clinton and Obama. And when you look deeper, you'll see that they're very similar. The only difference is they come at it from a different point of view. And in all cases, the same outcome is going to occur, one step closer to a Vatican-led New World Order. So now we're in the Trump era. Now, let's look at war and all the presidents I just mentioned. If you look back at Bush, he intentionally lied to us about the Iraq War, a war which had no relation with U.S. security or defense. And that came after the government was involved in an inside job to create that powder keg event, or to create that Pearl Harbor event that led us into this huge war in the Middle East that's still going on today. Now, when Clinton came in, he was before Bush, of course, and Obama afterwards, they all intentionally lied to us about various humanitarian wars, which had nothing to do with our security or defense. And these same people, these same presidents today, whether they're in office or not, lied to us into Iraq. They all lied about the Iraq War, are now trying to lie to us into a Cold War, or maybe even a hot war with Russia. Isn't that interesting? Okay, now what about Trump on the same issue? Let's look at him. Now, Trump campaigned, if you listen to his campaign speeches like I did every night so I could present to you the greatest American stage play ever produced in the history of mankind, because that's really all it is. It's a nice stage play. And we're the extras, not even getting paid. We pay them. And we're the extras in the movie who are expendable. But he campaigned on peace and non-intervention. But he's already ramped up the war in Syria, the war in Yemen, where the U.S. and Saudi Arabia are committing possible war crimes, as we just heard yesterday, when U.S.-backed bombing killed over 100 innocent people. However, they blame it on ISIS, but he's already increased drone strikes by 432%. And Trump's top advisor, he's predicting war with Russia and China. That's Steve Bannon, and you can see some of those comments. He said this: we're going to war in the South China Sea, no doubt. So it really, folks, doesn't look like peace is going to break out anytime soon. And although Trump is talking peace through strength, what's happening really? Most of these, all these presidents, on the surface seem different, but they're all the same. The policies stack up one on top of the other to create the Vatican-led New World Order. Now, let's look at the war on terror. I said, when you think about it, are they similar? Of course they are. I said, basically, there's a war within. They've brought radical Islam here through the use of a charter school run by a imam named Fethullah Gulen. Now, during that Turkey coup, the president of Turkey demanded that Erdogan be returned. So Clinton brings Gulen over here. We fund him to the tune of $500 million through the guise of moderate Islam. It's still going on. He's living like a king in the Pocono Mountains. But look at what's happened afterwards. Bush, Obama, and Trump now aren't doing anything about it. In fact, you don't hear a word about it in the news, do you? So anyway, they're very similar when you really look beneath the surface on those two issues. Now, when you look at Wall Street making people rich, Obama, Bush, and Clinton all pushed economic policies which made the rich richer. That's a fact. And the poor poorer. Bush and Obama bailed out the big banks, threw fistfuls of money at the banksters, and otherwise rewarded Wall Street and penalized Main Street. Clinton repealed the Depression-era law which separated regular deposit banking and speculation. Glass-Steagall allowed the giant banks to grow into megabanks and acted as cheerleader for the unregulated derivatives. Clinton, like Bush and Obama, decided that white-collar financial fraud didn't exist, or at least should be prosecuted. What's shouldn't be prosecuted, by the way? What's the effect of these policies? An analyst named Rick Baum said, using official U.S. government statistics, that inequality between the rich and the poor steadily increased under all three presidents. Real wages plummeted through Clinton, Bush, and Obama. What about Trump? Well, he's trying to change those policies, and there's a lot of talk on Capitol Hill. He's doing a lot of PR, but let's see if it really occurs, because he's appointed some of his old bankster cronies. And it's my estimation that a good PR program is what the American people will buy. We'll see if it actually comes to fruition. Or there could be just a huge financial failure or a catastrophic event that stops all of this stuff. So let's watch that. Now let's look at these presidents on spying on Americans. The NSA's mass surveillance of Americans started maybe in 1999 or earlier, when they already knew 9/11 was coming. Under Clinton, 3 months before 9/11, the head of the NSA admitted that NSA was collecting so much information from spying that it was drowning in too much data. Mass surveillance expanded under Bush, and even more under Obama. It's gotten to the point that the government is spying on virtually all of our electronic communications and transactions. Now what about Trump? Given that he's called for whistleblowers like Snowden and Assange to be executed for treason, although this may just be a front, because I believe that maybe Assange and Snowden both worked for the powers that be, and quickly implemented gag orders as soon as he took office, he almost certain to continue the expansion of mass surveillance on the American people. In other words, a president who severely punishes anyone trying to reveal the extent of spying on Americans probably has no intention of reining it in. And that quote I took from a Washington blog. It's interesting, because when you see what's going on now, there's a big to-do in Washington regarding spying on Trump. And I think what's happening really is they're bringing all this out in the open so Americans get used to it. And a recent survey, most Americans really don't care if they're spied on. And they say, excuse me. Okay, so let's look at these four presidents and see how they react to supporting dictators who support terrorism. And I'm going to take this from that Washington blog. Saudi Arabia now, folks, is the world's largest sponsor of radical Islamic terrorists. The Saudis have backed ISIS and many other brutal groups. and the most pro-ISIS tweets allegedly come from Saudi Arabia. But according to sworn declarations from a 9/11 commissioner and co-chair of congressional inquiry into 9/11, the Saudi government backed those hijackers. Now, we all know that they were in cahoots with the American government and the CIA. And still to this day, we are sending aid, arms to Saudi Arabia and work together with them. And the new Saudi king, he has ties to CIA-run Al-Qaeda and had ties to bin Laden and Islamic terrorism. Saudi Arabia is a hotbed for most radical Muslim terrorists of the world, although in Trump's recent travel ban, which has been held up in the courts, he didn't put Saudi Arabia on that list. So, Islamic terrorism is a creation of the CIA, and yet the U.S. has been supporting Saudis militarily with NSA intelligence and in every other way possible through Clinton, Bush, and Obama. What about Trump? Well, he's selling them right now massive amounts of arms, keeping them all off the list of restricted countries for immigration, and supporting Saudi war crimes in Yemen. It appears the voters, folks, may have been played one more time. Now, what I wanted to do is, since people ask me all the time, what about Trump? I thought I'd look to Walter Veith. I've been playing a lot of his videos and things over the years because he gives you some really insightful information of what's going on behind the scenes. So let's go to that, and I'll play as much as I can in this half hour and then pick it up in the second half hour. Okay, let me pod this up, and we'll go with Walter Veith. He does call this the Trump card. Okay, let's see if I can get this.
I've titled this little talk, The Trump Card. Now, in politics, we can always expect the unexpected. And the world was certainly taken by surprise when Donald Trump won the American presidential election. Now, in politics, we are taken by surprise, but in prophecy, we have certainty. And when we look at the prophetic picture of the book of Revelation, then we can see that there is a plan and there is a movement in a particular direction. And even though it looks confusing out there and sometimes doesn't work according to our expectations, the plan will be fulfilled according to the prophetic picture. In Revelation, we read that the second beast will form an image to the first beast. Now, the first beast was identified by the Protestant world as the papal system, and the second beast was looked at in the Protestant context, and Wesley, in his time, expected that it would soon appear. And the only one that fulfills all the criteria of the second beast is the United States of America, that would make an image to the first beast. Now, the first beast, as we know, was a politico-religious system that dominated world events and world affairs. And so the second system will be the same, where politics and religion will be mingled with each other and will elevate the first beast in the process. Now, that is what the prophetic scenario says. And sometimes when we look at events in history, it seems as though the exact opposite is happening. JFK said the following: I believe in an America where the separation of church and state is absolute, where no Catholic prelate would tell the president, should he be Catholic, how to act, and no Protestant minister would tell his parishioners for whom to vote, where no church or church school is granted any public funds or political preference, and where no man is denied public office merely because his religion differs from the president, who might appoint him, or the people who might elect him. I believe in an America that is officially neither Catholic, Protestant, nor Jewish, where no public official either requests or accepts instructions on public policy from the Pope, the National Council of Churches, or any other ecclesiastical source, where no religious body seeks to impose its will directly or indirectly upon the general populace or the public acts of its officials, and where religious liberty is so indivisible that an act against one church is treated as an act against all. So Kennedy still stood for the absolute separation of church and state. Now, if the prophecy is to be fulfilled, then this situation must change, because the image must be like the original. And the original was church and state dictating morality to society. And so the second beast must, if it's to become an image, do exactly the same. Now, I believe one of the reasons why Kennedy disappeared from the scene and was assassinated was because he stood for these principles, besides other things that he did, like touch the Federal Reserve, etc. Now, under the two-party state in the United States, we seem to think that you are either voting for one system or another system. But that is, in fact, not the case. Quigley, who was, Bill Clinton's favorite professor, said the following in his Tragedy and Hope. The argument of two parties should represent opposed ideas and policies. One perhaps of the right and the other of the left is a foolish idea acceptable only to doctrinate and academic thinkers. Instead, the two parties should be almost identical, so that the American people can throw the rascals out at any election without leading to any profound or extensive shifts in policy. The policies that are vital and necessary for America are no longer subject of significant disagreement, but are disputable only in details of procedure, priority, or method. In other words, what he's saying is that the two-party system is there just to appease the populace, but the general direction will be the same. The puppet masters behind the scenes will still control events as they deem fit. Now, some of the puppets might not even know what is happening because the puppet master is in control. And sometimes even high officials can be misled or be thinking that they are doing one thing when they are actually propagating something else. Now, this is how the Hegelian dialectic works. If we have a look at a definition, it says it's a framework for guiding thoughts and actions into conflicts that lead to synthetic solutions which can only be introduced once those being manipulated take a side that will advance the predetermined agenda. So there's controlled opposition, problem, reaction, solution. Now, this has been used for millennia in the political sphere. You create the crisis to induce the change, to bring about the direction that you really want everyone to go. But you have to swing the general mindset in a particular direction in order to get there. Now, let's assume you want a particular religious agenda to be instituted, and you know that secular society will not fall for that idea. Then you can bring in this dialectic and bring in an opposing view, bring in an opposite view, which becomes totally unacceptable to the general populace, forcing them in a direction where they will eventually embrace that which you wanted all along, but had they remained middle of the road, they would never have accepted such a solution. So this is a method of mind control, mass mind control. Now, when we look at the Obama legacy, then this becomes apparent. He's the one who said Trump is unfit to serve as president. And Donald Trump was using all the failures of the past administration to highlight his points. I mean, if you look at the entire world, it's in chaos. Refugees are streaming in all over. Bombs are exploding. ISIS is out of control. And all of these issues play on the minds of people and is herding them in a particular direction where they want to ensconce themselves and protect themselves from these waves of evil that are rolling in upon society, and then perhaps doing exactly that which prophecy said they would do, which they would not normally have done had the circumstances been different. So what is the legacy of Obama and Hillary Clinton? Well, it is a liberal agenda. We have seen so many changes in society and so many laws being brought in where, well, a Christian morality seems to be decimated, nothing left of it, so that those that have a Christian ethic would want to scream out and say, we have to change this world. It can no longer carry on like this. And this is exactly what you do. You swing the pendulum to absolute liberalism in every sphere, and then you let it go and let it swing to the other side so that you can get exactly what you want and what prophecy predicts. Obama is the one who said the future must not belong to those who slander the prophet of Islam. Now, if you look at the web pages, there's so much conjecture as to whether the man was perhaps a clandestine Muslim. And there are pictures of his ring, which tends to be Islamic, and there are pictures of him in Islamic dress, and many, many statements to this effect. And if you look at the administration, many high officials are of the Muslim faith. So it seems as if America was being taken away from its Christian roots and swung in another direction. But prophecy said that the second beast, the United States of America, would implement legislation that would further the first beast, which is Catholicism. And therefore it must be a Christian nation bringing about Christian legislation. And here you had Obama taking the mindset in a totally opposite direction. This is a brilliant Hegelian dialectic. Whether he knew about what he was doing, whether he did it consciously or whether he did it subconsciously is irrelevant. The fact of the matter is, this is what has happened. I believe, of course, that the insider elite is pretty clued up as to what the agenda is, but nevertheless, one can leave open the option that they might have done it unknowingly. But this was the legacy. And now, with the Trump administration, we are going to probably see the pendulum swing. Catholic Herald, Obama calls for world leaders to heed Pope Francis's message. The President of the United States said he wants fellow world leaders to reflect on Pope Francis' encyclical talking about the environment. So you have this dichotomy of thought. On the one hand, you have this movement towards a totally different religious system, and on the other hand, you have this underpinning of the papal system. And under his leadership, you had the visit of Pope Francis, where he went through the entire procedure, almost like a president of the world being inaugurated, speaking from the balcony, which is a step higher than any of the presidents have done. So you have this dichotomy of thought. You have, on the one hand, the appearance that it's moving in this direction, and on the other hand, the realities of the laws that it's moving in another direction. And then you had the two opponents. You had the one standing for the principles of the right, the other one standing for the principles on the left, and it was a vicious campaign. Now, is this a dialectic, a Hegelian dialectic? Is this a game of good cop, bad cop, or two ideologies which are to undergo pendulum swing? Well, let's have a look at some of the facts without judging any of the individuals.
Okay, I'm going to have to take a break, and we're going to come back in the second half hour and continue with this very interesting presentation regarding the Trump card, Bible Prophecy Update 2017 by Walter Veith. And we'll be back in 3 short minutes on the Investigative Journal.
The program you are listening to is 100% sponsored by you, the listener, on this First Amendment Rights Media channel. You will notice that there are few commercials on this radio network. There's a good reason for that. Corporate advertising dollars come with strings that limit program content. So without your help, these programs cannot continue on internet or our several affiliates. If you benefit by the educational law programs, we ask you to give. If you are admonished or nurtured by the Bible and ministry programs, we ask you to give. If some voice a cause that you are passionate about, we ask you to give. If you believe in any of these, we ask you to support them as you would a missionary on a continual basis, as if giving a tithe for missionary radio. These programs are not commercially viable and must be supported by those faithful to the cause of truth. Look for the button to sponsor your favorite programs at our listen and schedule pages on the internet. Then, when you subscribe, we will send you the last quarterly MP3 CD of that program immediately, and continue to do so with each new quarter. We will also give you unlimited archive access to all of our programs. We're asking you to give much less than a tithe, so that you may also send support directly to a particular program host, cause, and anywhere else the Spirit may lead you. Do all to the glory of our God and Creator, for His holy nation, the only kingdom that will last forever. Thank you for listening.
The book of Revelation says, "The spirit of prophecy is the testimony of Jesus Christ." This is at the very heart of FirstAmendmentRadio.com. In that spirit, we have created the Prophecy Reality News app for all of your mobile devices, streaming First Amendment Radio 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. Available for your Apple, Android device, and smartphone, absolutely free. Get the Prophecy Reality News app installed today, so you can listen to First Amendment Radio wherever you are. The Prophecy.
Since the beginning of time, kings have sought it, nations have fought for it. It has been traded, it has been borrowed, it has been purchased, it has been stolen. There's a reason for it. To secure the blessings of liberty to ourselves and to our posterity. Invest with the security of gold and silver. Call Discount Gold and Silver Trading at 1-800-375-4188 or visit discountgoldandsilvertrading.net. Listen to Financial Survival with your host Melody Cedarstrom right here on FirstAmendmentRadio.com at 4 p.m. Eastern or 1 p.m. Pacific Time. Visit discountgoldandsilvertrading.net or call Discount Gold and Silver Trading at 1-800-375-4188. Toll free 1-800-375-4188.
The following program is labeled dangerous and off limits by the supreme Jesuit command. But stand tall, people. Listen up, and you may just learn something.
Oh, dear Lord Jesus, this ain't happening, man. This can't be happening, man. This isn't happening.
Okay, welcome back to the second half hour of the Investigative Journal, and I want to get right back to this interesting presentation by Walter Veith regarding the Trump card, Bible prophecy, and other things. Here we go.
And see whether we can come up with some form of conclusion. Here we have the famous supper, the so-called charity supper that takes place just before the election, where you have the Archbishop of New York, who always is the head of the Knights of Malta, in America, where he has this meal with the candidates that are to be elected for president. And you can see the jovial nature. This is church and state at its best. And the two of them smiling next to Cardinal Dolan. Now it's interesting when you look at the actions of these individuals, you also get this idea of this dialectic. I mean, if you take the Cardinal, for example, the papacy will make one statement, a very conservative statement, let's say with regard to whatever, lifestyle choices or contraception. The papacy will make one statement, and the people who are supposed to live it out will do exactly the opposite. So you're confused. You're thinking, why are the Jesuits and the Knights of Malta doing the exact opposite of what the papacy has just proclaimed? Why do you have this dichotomy of thought? Well, you see, in this thinking, there's this yin-yang aspect. The white aspect and the black aspect, well, they augment each other. The one cannot exist without the other, so they say, in this yin-yang philosophy. So even within the ranks of the church, you have this dichotomy of thought. Now, the two candidates, as we will see, fit the bill in every single aspect. If you go to the web pages and you look at the bloodlines of the American presidents, then it is a known fact that all the presidents that have, well, reigned in the United States have all been related. So let's have a look at what the media has to say. If all presidents are related, which of the 2017 candidates will be the next president? As it turns out, both Trump and Hillary Clinton are related to John of Gaunt, the 14th century royal. Gaunt was the first Duke of Lancaster, who was the son of King Edward III, according to my heritage. Trump is related through his mother, Mary Ann McLeod, back to his 17th grandfather, John Beaufort, while Clinton is related through her father and the Rodham family back to the 17th great-grandmother, Joan Beaufort. The two candidates are 19th cousins, and so they both have the right bloodlines to continue this lineage. Now, that's another story as to why they should all be related, and it's fascinating that the Bible doesn't speak about the presidents of the world, it speaks about the kings of the world. And it really, over the course of history, hasn't mattered which of the candidates has won, because the candidates have always both been in the same bloodlines. Here are the American presidential bloodlines. Here's another page that explains this. Did you know all 44 U.S. presidents have carried European royal bloodlines into office? 34 have been genetic descendants of just one person, Charlemagne, the brutal 8th century king of the Franks. Now, that's a fascinating story, because Charlemagne is, of course, the one who was crowned emperor of the Roman Empire, the new Roman Empire, and the Pope was crowning him whilst his kingdom was falling apart. So he's a symbol of this unity of the world under one leadership, the papacy. And then if we go to Edward III of England, in fact, the presidential candidates with the most royal genes has won every single American election. Now, it seems as if Trump and Hillary had exactly the same lineage, so it didn't really matter which one of the two won. This information comes from Burke's Peerage, which is the Bible of aristocratic genealogy based in London. Every presidential election in America since and including George Washington in 1789 to Bill Clinton has been won by the candidate with the most British and French royal genes. Of the 42 presidents to Clinton, 33 have been related to two people, Alfred the Great, King of England, and Charlemagne, the most famous monarch of France. So it goes on. 19 of them are related to England's Edward III and has 2,000 blood connections to Prince Charles. The same goes with the banking families in America. George Bush and Barbara Bush are from the same bloodline, the Pierce bloodline, which changed its name from Percy when it crossed the Atlantic. Percy is one of the aristocratic families of Britain to this day. They were involved in the gunpowder plot to blow up Parliament at the time of Guy Fawkes. Now that's even more fascinating, because that was a Jesuit plot to overthrow the Protestant government in England. So if all these bloodlines belong to these individuals that overthrew Protestantism, now that would be an interesting plot for the puppet masters to work on behind the scenes. But we're just looking at the facts, so let's continue. The Mail online predicted or showed that The Simpsons predicted the Donald Trump presidency, And it didn't end well. Time travel episode from 2000 featured broke nation relied on aid from China. Now, as we have seen in some of the previous series that we have made, The Simpsons the writers of The Simpsons are all probably insider individuals with more knowledge about what is going to happen in the world than most would deem possible. And as some candidates have said in the past, if something works out the way that it has worked out, it works out that way because it was planned that way. So there is that element, but there is also, of course, an element of luck maybe involved as well. Now, The Simpsons generally use many esoteric symbols in their productions, and they have been extremely accurate on a number of issues and have predicted many things that seemed unlikely or impossible years in advance. 9/11 being a case in point, the destructive events in the United States. Now let's have a look at some other facts, because what we are interested in is prophecy and not the games and the dialectics that are being played in this world. The National Catholic Reporter tells us that Mike Pence, who is going to be the Vice President of the United States, which is a very powerful figure, is a born-again evangelical Catholic. And the web pages in the world tell us this very thing. Now, that's somewhat of a misnomer, and a few years ago, that would not have been a possibility. To be a born-again evangelical Catholic would be considered an oxymoron. It would be impossible. In my youth, that would have been impossible. But the religious landscape has changed, and there's been such a merging of Catholicism and Protestantism that this contradiction in terms is today a common reality. So, a born-again evangelical Catholic. They say that he was a rather dedicated Catholic, Mike Pence. He was an altar boy and very dedicated. And what about Donald Trump? Well, Donald Trump attended an Ivy League school, so let's ask the Washington Post something about his background. When he was young, he went to the private Kew Forest School in Forest Hills, Queens, where his father, Frederick, a very wealthy real estate developer, was on the governing board. Behavior problems led Donald's exit from the school, at which point he was sent to New York Military Academy at the age of 13 by his parents, and who hoped the discipline of the school would channel his energy in a positive manner. He did well there and went to Fordham University, a Jesuit school in the Bronx. So Donald Trump tries to downplay his Fordham experience and rather to upplay his later experiences. And then he went to the University of Pennsylvania and studied economics for 2 years. So he did attend a Jesuit school, which is interesting and just one of the facts. Now let's go back to Mike Pence again. Postmodern evangelical Catholic conservative. But Pence is also very much a creation of the last half century of American political religious life. Born and raised Catholic, he became a Catholic youth minister and reportedly wanted to be a priest. But according to interviews, Pence has given over the years, interestingly, has more recently declined to talk specifically about his spiritual evolution. While in college from 1978 to 81, he began blending his Catholicism with evangelical Protestantism. I made a commitment to Christ, Pence said. I'm a born-again evangelical Catholic. So here we have a Catholic vice president who is in a position to reach out to evangelicals. Now it's fascinating that the other side, of course, had chosen Tim Kaine as their vice president. And the two met in debate, and apparently Mike Pence was the stronger candidate in that debate, or so they say, but nevertheless would have made any difference, because both of these are Catholic gentlemen. And let's have a look what the Harvard Divinity School tells us about Tim Kaine and Mike Pence and faith. It says that Kaine was educated at a Jesuit high school and has been influenced throughout his life by Jesuits. Often seen as progressive and open-minded in the US, he's also been called a Pope Francis Catholic. What does it mean to be a liberal Catholic reformer? Now, this is rather fascinating. So you have these high-profile Catholics as vice presidents, the one wanting to be a priest and was an altar boy, and the other one, all his training in Jesuit environments. Now, it's interesting that the Jesuits themselves say, or Ignatius Loyola said, that if you have to choose sides, then a Jesuit can choose one side and represent it to the point of death, while a fellow Jesuit may choose the opposite side and defend that to the point of death. That is the Hegelian Dialectic, and it's fascinating how it works. So it really wouldn't have mattered which one of these two would have become the vice president, and it really wouldn't have mattered which one of these two would have become president. Now, before I even talked about this, I thought that Hillary Clinton would probably fit the modern profile somewhat better, but I also said it doesn't matter which one of them wins. But now on reflection, it becomes rather interesting that it went the way it went. Now, in the discussion here with these people from Harvard, Donald Trump's running mate, Governor Mike Pence, described himself as a born-again evangelical Catholic. Is this an unusual faith mix? And what does this combination say about his public service? And the answer? I'm not quite sure what Governor Pence intends to affirm by a born-again evangelical Catholic. He comes from an Irish Catholic background, was raised as such during college, Indiana and Nova College. He had an evangelical religious experience under the influence of a non-denominational group. However, in the following years, he still considered himself a Catholic, went to Mass, worked as a youth minister at a Catholic church, and even thought of becoming a priest. However, in the mid-1990s, he joined the Grace Evangelical Church, which is affiliated with the Evangelical Free Church in America. One could describe it as a Baptist denomination. It was, however, the church to which he started to take his family in Indianapolis. At that time, he described himself as a Christian, conservative, Republican, in that order. In this description, the word Catholic was not present. So, when we look at these two, they are both capable of fulfilling the prophetic agenda. Pope Francis calls for unity between evangelicals, Catholics, and he said that division is the work of the devil. So they had to be brought together. So Pence is actually the perfect one, because he is both Catholic and evangelical and can bring them together. Pope Francis has called for unity amongst evangelicals, Catholics, and Christians from other denominations, emphasizing that we are one in Christ and warning that division between the groups is the work of the devil. The division is the work of the father of lies, the father of discord, who does everything possible to keep us divided, Francis said in a video message to a gathering sponsored by the John 17 movement. Now, the John 17 movement was a movement to gather all the evangelicals under one umbrella, under the papacy, or together with the papacy. Charisma News gives a very interesting insight. It tells us that Kenneth Copeland laid hands on Donald Trump and prayed over him. This is fascinating. Well, Charisma News is a very prominent journal. Earlier this month, we reported how Paula White set up an invitation-only meeting between the Republican presidential candidate Donald Trump and evangelical pastors. That meeting happened this week, and plenty of Pentecostals were there to lay hands on the billionaire, make declarations of his life and pray. Beyond Paula White, also present were Kenneth and Gloria Copeland, and then another whole host of very prominent evangelical leaders. Where is this heading towards? Are we heading towards a union of church and state? Now, what is Donald Trump? Well, let's have a look. Religious News Services says, is Donald Trump now a born-again Christian? And when I read what the journal Christianity Today had to say about Donald Trump, about his remarks and his anti-woman statements and his wild statements, then they were, well, less than pleased, it seems. And now, afterwards, they're all scattering and trying to come together on these issues. Donald Trump has described himself as a Presbyterian and Protestant, a Sunday church person, which is very fascinating, and a collector of Bibles. Now, the presumptive Republican presidential nominee reportedly can add born-again Christian to that list too, according to one of the members of Trump's new Evangelical Advisory Board. So here you have a Sunday-keeping Protestant. Now, if you're going to reach out to the religious community and bring them together, wouldn't it be interesting if the Protestant reaches out to the Catholics and the Catholics reaches out to the Protestants? Then you would have a perfect mix. But I found this rather interesting, and an interesting mix, because by some of his statements, it is hard to imagine that all of this is, perfect truth. Now, this was the statement that Donald Trump made to the Catholic world.
Catholics are an important part of the American story. America has been strengthened by hardworking Catholics. From New York to California, the Catholic story is truly unique, and it's a great story. From marching for civil rights to educating millions of children, serving the poor, and helping define the pro-life movement, clergy and lay Catholics across the country have made countless contributions to the American success and the American success story. Washington politicians have been hostile to the church. They have been hostile to Catholics. They have been hostile to the members of Catholicism. My administration will stand side by side with the American Catholics to promote the values we all share as Christians and Americans. God bless you. God bless the United States of America. We will make America great again.
Oh, I think that's pretty obvious now where Trump stands. I mean, do you think he knows what the Vatican-led New World Order is? And why is he giving all these accolades to Catholics? Is he doing it to cover the story? I think so. Okay, I'm going to skip to the last few minutes of Walter Veith's presentation. And he talks about how the evangelicals supported Trump. But really, the evangelicals also support Pope Francis. Quite interesting.
So this is rather fascinating. These people went to Rome to discuss the reunification. And this event is going to be very prominent and public in the year 2017, when the Lutheran world celebrates its 500th centennial of the Protestant Reformation. So these are the issues of the day. The Christian Pope says megachurch pastor Jack Graham ready to champion Donald Trump after meeting with 900 evangelicals. Now, he is also one of those that went to the Pope. Former Southern Baptist Convention president and megachurch pastor Jack Graham says that he is ready to champion Donald Trump after attending the meeting between the presumptive Republican nominee and over 900 evangelical pastors and activists in New York City on Tuesday. These people are, on the one hand, now the advisors to the president, and to bring about this change, this making America great again. And on the other hand, they are the ones who are negotiating with the papacy for reunification. In fact, that is exactly what Donald Trump vowed to do. Donald Trump vowed to close the gap between church and state, according to Time. And it states that the GOP presidential nominee has tripled down with one base of political support that has steadfastly remained with him, white evangelical voters, by promising to dismantle the laws that separate church and state in America. Now, it's fascinating what he said on the issue. And if you look what happened to religion, if you look at what's happening to Christianity, and you look at the number of people going to the churches, and the evangelicals know this also, it's not on this kind of climb, it's on this kind of a climb of slow and steady in the wrong direction, Trump said. A lot of it has to do with the fact that you've been silenced. You've been silenced like a child has been silenced. You have a chance to do something that will be earth-shaking, he said. I literally mean it, earth-shaking. You've got to get your people out to vote. Now, if this is what Donald Trump promised, then he is promising precisely what the Bible said would happen. An earth-shaking event that will induce God to intervene in human affairs. It's interesting that both Donald Trump and Pence said that they cherished the Sunday because that was part of their heritage and that is what they remember of their childhood. Now, the Lord's Day Alliance in the Boston Globe said the following: the Lord's Day Alliance, founded by 6 major Protestant denominations in 1888, I find these dates so fascinating, spent a century fighting to force industrialists to give workers time to attend religious services and later to protect the blue laws. Those are the ones that bring in Sunday legislation. But little by little, drinking, sporting, shopping became permissible on Sundays. In the last 20 or so years, the group has shifted to advocating to an internal recognition of the Sabbath. The point is, where can a stressed-out society find regeneration and renewal?
Okay, I got to cut it off right there. We'll be back tomorrow on the Investigative Journal.
Visit crosstheborder.org, CROSS, crosstheborder.org, to get your print, EPUB, or PDF version of the book, The Rapture Will Be Canceled. That's crosstheborder.org.
I know you all want answers, and believe me, so do I, and I'll do my best to get them.
Despite Nicolas Cage's promise to do his best to get left behind rapture answers for us, don't hold your breath. Not everyone believes Left Behind is true prophecy. Some may even regard as conspiratorial the mainstream re-release of the Left Behind movie with actor Nicolas Cage portraying the main character as an attempt to further reinforce in the minds of all this perception of false prophecy in order to condition the masses for the play about to begin. If you want true Bible prophecy answers, get the book, The Rapture Will Be Canceled. The author exposes the Latin rapture origin, the 7-year tribulation deception, true Bible revelation of Daniel's 70 weeks, the abomination of desolation, the restrainer, America in the Revelation, the image of the beast and the mark of the beast, and the truth about God's chosen people, and so much more about Bible prophecy. This book will shatter the Left Behind paradigm of future events. Get the book, The Rapture Will Be Canceled. Visit crosstheborder.org, CROSS, crosstheborder.org, to get your print, EPUB, or PDF version of the book, The Rapture Will Be Canceled. That's crosstheborder.org.